Hi, I'm Nancy Bell, and I'm excited to talk to you today about our learning centers. It's just you and me. Together, we're going to go on a tour of what our learning centers are like and also learn about the research that we've done and how we can change lives in our learning centers. Here we go. I titled this slide, and remember this is just you and me and I'm talking just to you. And so the first slide that you're going to look at is the title slide that says, "A learning adventure awaits you in a Lindamood-Bell center." I wanted to share with you a letter that I received from this young man. I'm hoping that you can read it on the screen, but if you can't, I'll read it to you. He says, "Dear Nancy Bell, thank you for creating Lindamood-Bell. Hi, my name is Christian, but I like to be called Bubba. I study in the Berkeley Center, and they have been helping me in visualizing and verbalizing VV right now, and I have only been here for 2 months. When I first came in, I was reading at 2.8 reading level, and now I'm reading at the 6th grade. Sincerely, Bubba." Bubba's just one of the students that we have made a significant difference for in the more than 30 years that we've been doing instruction in our Lindamood-Bell Learning Centers. Our goal is to help each individual, reach to his or her potential to learn. Sometimes we work with students experiencing learning challenges, and sometimes we work with students who simply need a sensory cognitive boost to be more successful in school. Our instruction often results in significant gains in weeks of intervention. We change lives, and that's the story for today. Here's a testimonial that we were sent that I'm hoping you could again read it on the screen, but in case you can't, this is a mother who says, "You have literally changed our lives. My son has gone from reservations in all classes to honors in all classes. Lindamood-Bell and its awesome teachers have given him the tools to soar, and he feels that freedom of flight. Thank you, thank you, thank you." So how do we do that for Bubba and for the student that you just read about? First, we start with the learning ability evaluation to identify an individual's strengths and weaknesses in learning. Second, we plan individualized instruction to change a weakness to a strength. Carson is a student that we worked with in a learning center, and Carson is going to show you what a learning center looks like.
I'm Carson. This is my Lindamood-Bell Learning Center. Let me show you around. This is my instructor.
I'm one of 4 instructors who works with Carson every day, 5 days a week. We use the Lindamood-Bell programs to enhance reading, spelling, comprehension, and math for children and adults.
This is my instruction team.
Like all of our students, Carson received a learning ability evaluation. This is a battery of standardized tests that helps to pinpoint his strengths and weaknesses. From those results, we're able to create an instructional plan that best meets his needs and helps him to fulfill his potential.
I'm here to get my reading up to speed. School just wasn't cutting it.
As Carson's consultant, I check in on him 3 to 5 times a week to monitor and pace his progress through our programs. I also update his parents once a week. We want Carson to be independent as quickly as possible.
Here's a picture of Pat Lindamood and me, the founders of Lindamood-Bell Learning Processes. And what I wanted to share with you on this is from 1986, we have gone from instructional experience in working with students to scientific research that I'm going to be sharing with you. I'm very excited to share with you, in fact, let me have you go just to my face. I'm very excited to share with you the most recent research that we have on dyslexia. This is kind of our story. We have worked with thousands of individuals of all ages and all levels of learning challenges. Years and years of sitting across one-on-one from a child or an adult struggling to read a word or trying to comprehend a paragraph provide us with a unique insight into the learning process as we began to ask ourselves, what is it that we can do that they're not able to do? So we began to sort out what are the underlying processes for learning. Now we can answer why some children can easily learn to read words at an early age, yet others cannot. We can answer why some individuals continue to decode below their potential despite years of special education, a variety of reading programs, and or private tutoring. We can tell you why some children continue to have difficulty memorizing sight words. This is a picture of me in a classroom helping them work on sight words and symbol imagery. We can tell you why many students read words and text very easily, yet they struggle to comprehend what they read. That's me with a high school student. We can tell you why many students still read word for word, even at the end of phonological instruction, and often they've been very successful in that instruction. But they're analytical readers, not global readers. We can tell you there's a primary cause of dyslexia, but most importantly, we can tell you that that cause can be remediated, and dyslexia does not have to be a lifelong struggle. So stay tuned. I'm going to show you some slides toward the end of the presentation. This is what a mother of a fourth grade student said. For the first time in his life, confidence and calm behavior have replaced fearful and indifferent behavior. He told me last week, "Mom, it's a miracle. I can read so much better." This was a dyslexic student. And here's the next chapter of what I want to talk to you about. Sensory input is the primary foundation. Let me say it again. Sensory input is the primary foundation of cognition and success in learning. So after experience working with students, like I showed you one-on-one, and the scientific research that we conducted, we can tell you that the sensory input of imagery is the primary foundation for cognition and learning. Imagery. There are 3 sensory cognitive functions. I'm sure you've heard about phoneme awareness. Our Pat Lindamood was the pioneer for that initial research on phoneme awareness, which is the ability to perceive the identity, number, and sequence of sounds within words. The new kids on our block are also sensory cognitive functions, that's symbol imagery and concept imagery. Symbol imagery is the ability to create mental imagery or create mental imagery for sounds and letters within words. And this is probably the most exciting part of what Lindamood-Bell has been able to contribute in the field of learning, in my opinion. That is that concept imagery is the ability to create an image gestalt or a whole for oral and written language comprehension. So let's learn a little bit more about this imagery. There are 2 types of imagery. There's parts and wholes. Symbol imagery is that imagery for sounds and letters in words. You see that that's Buzz. It's an actual, that's a student that we worked with. This is actually Buzz and Sophie that we have illustrated them. This is Buzz visualizing the letters in a word. And this is Sophie visualizing an image whole for language comprehension. Here's Buzz again. I wanted to show you this slide because phonological and orthographic imagery, so it's not just orthographic for letters, it's also phonological imagery for reading and spelling words, and some people think of it as orthographic memory, which helps a student to become a global reader. Here's an example of that. Try this with me. I'm going to show you that just for a little bit. Got it? Now, see if you can still retrieve those in the form of a mental representation for that non-word. And tell me what is the 4th letter that you saw. If you can do that, that means your symbol imagery is intact. but there are a lot of individuals who cannot hold that pattern in their head. So if you have weakness in symbol imagery, it can impact your word reading skills, for example, word attack and word recognition, orthographic awareness and phonological awareness. It can cause you to have difficulty memorizing sight words. I can tell you that when I was working with Buzz many years ago, when he was reading a sentence and he was trying to learn the word no, K-N-O-W, I would put it on a card to try to teach him that word, and then 2 sentences down, he would say K-N-O-W. He would see it again and try to go k-n-ow. He could not learn his sight words. And so what happened to him was that every time he was reading in context, he was slow, and then he would therefore guess at the words because he was trying to sound them out. It can cause weakness in fast and accurate decoding, fast and accurate self-correction, and obviously this is what I was talking about with Buzz, contextual reading where the student guesses rather than rapid, accurate decoding. And certainly it can cause weakness in spelling, in orthographic spelling, where spelling will be almost phonetic. Could be that for reach, or it could be that for reach, which would be phonetic, but Buzz would have trouble remembering orthographically that there would be an A in that word. Concept imagery is the exact opposite. It's like a two-sided coin. Concept imagery images the whole for comprehension and thinking. So here's Sophie visualizing a clown in a rodeo. See if you can do it. The big black horse, picture this, ran across the green field. With his head held high, his hooves pounded the ground, and his thick mane blew wildly in the wind. Did you picture it? Did you picture that black horse running across this, and maybe even have the imagery, the auditory imagery of his hooves pounding and his mane blowing? That's concept imagery, where instead of just visualizing a word, you're visualizing the whole concept. So if you have weak concept imagery, what does that mean? And what does it mean for all the students that we see? It means that when language is coming at you in oral form or in written form, it can go in one ear, literally, and out the other, where the individual tends to grasp, and this was a big aha moment for us, tends to grasp parts like dates or names, but they don't grasp the whole concept. They just get random details and facts. So if you can visualize the gestalt, which is what I'm showing here, that imagery becomes the sensory information that prevents that language from going in one ear and out the other. And from that imaged whole, and so that's important to know that you're going to stop the language from just going in, whether you're hearing it or reading it. But what's really important is from that imaged whole, then you can do what are called higher order thinking skills. Get the main idea, draw a conclusion, make an inference, predict, or evaluate. If you only have parts that you've processed, if it's come in one ear and gone the other and you've just gotten some random parts, you're going to have a lot of difficulty grasping the main idea or drawing a conclusion, because you need to have the whole in order to do those higher order thinking skills. Get it? Okay. So what are the symptoms of that? And as you can see from this slide, there's a lot of them. For example, if you have weak concept imagery, you're going to have weak oral and written language comprehension. You'll get parts of what you read. But you'll also have, or you can also experience difficulty with critical and logical thinking, problem solving, abstract thinking. For sure, if you can now think of the students that you've seen or the individuals in your life, you can note that they'll have difficulty following directions, that if you give them directions, they'll remember one of them or two of them, but not all of them. But this was another aha moment for us. We did not think that it would go beyond just receiving language. But what we noted is that it was, if you had weakness in this, it also was difficult for you to express language. So whether you're expressing it orally or expressing it in writing, where you were writing in paragraphs or responding to a test question, if that language is coming up there and imaged in parts, then the expressive language can be not sequential, can be random. with random thoughts, and the same thing with writing. Grasping humor was another aha moment for us as we were researching this. The individuals with weakness in concept imagery frequently don't get a joke. They can get the humor in something like sliding on a banana, but they will miss language-based humor. And then I think these are probably now starting to be obvious to you. Interpreting social situations, so this can impact students that need what we call pragmatics. Understanding cause and effect. You can't understand cause and effect if you only gotten a few parts from it. Mental mapping. These are the individuals that can go to a parking lot and then come out and go shopping, come out and have no idea where they parked or be able to get around when they're traveling. And I think this is the big one. I think that with all of these things that are happening here, that it causes weakness in responding to a communicating world. So, what are the component parts of reading, and how do these two sensory cognitive functions and phonological awareness, how are they played out in these component parts? So I called this many years ago the reading circles, and this is an explanation right up here. Sensory cognitive functions underlie these necessary component parts of reading. So the auditory circle represents phonological processing and word attack. It also, now we can say that symbol imagery lies in there also. The visual circle represents orthographic processing, word recognition, and symbol imagery and phonological awareness underlie both of those. The language circle represents being able to sound out words, recognize words, and bring that back to contextual reading and vocabulary. And then you notice that this is a Venn diagram. And so you might be asking yourself, what is the big circle around? What's this circle? And you can answer that if you think, what is the only reason that we read? We don't read to just be able to sound out a word or recognize a word. We read to comprehend. And so these, I think of these as subsets of this greater set of comprehension. So keep all those circles in mind. And now we'll go back to Buzz and Sophie and see how it plays out. So if you have a student that has weak decoding, sometimes they come to us with a prior label of dyslexia. That is a student that has weakness in symbol imagery. And that student is likely going to be, say, a fifth grader reading, sounding out words at a second grade level, or first grade or second grade level here, and reading at a first grade level in paragraph reading. This is a completely different student. This is Sophie. Sophie has weak comprehension. She may have come to us with a label of hyperlexia or autism, but largely the Sophies don't come to us with any labels. They're the hidden. I had a parent say to me once, my daughter has this problem in comprehension, and it's very, very difficult to diagnose. It's like the hidden weakness that nobody seems to see. And when you see that, when we see that, we know that that's a weakness in concept imagery. So here's just a very quick look at Buzz. At the end of sixth grade, Buzz hated reading. He had a number of phonological processing programs, but he still couldn't read text accurately and easily and rapidly. His teacher came back to us and said he can sound out words better, but he still can't read, and she was actually right. He was at the 75th percentile, which is, if you think of percentiles, let me give you a quick lesson on that. Percentiles go 1st to 99th. 50th is the middle part of that. In terms of a range, we think of 25th to 75th. Some people think this above this would be a strength. We think above this is a weakness. Some people think that can go as low as a 16th. I think that somebody that's performing as low as a 16th percentile is going to be struggling in whatever task that was measuring. whatever process that was measuring. So you can see that Buzz had strength in that. But look at this. Look at Buzz's strength in word attack. Look at this, 95th percentile. His word recognition, however, this was a 95th percentile, was only the 37th percentile. So despite all the phonological awareness instruction he was given, he still was not able to read words in isolation, what we call word recognition, at the same level that he could sound them out. And then when we put him on, this is paragraph reading, where Buzz was reading in context, you can see that his rate was low, his accuracy was only a 25th percentile, and his fluency was a 16th percentile, yet his comprehension was a 37th percentile. If I go back here, Buzz had no weakness in comprehension. If he could decode it, like many dyslexic students, if he could decode it, he could comprehend it. But if you look back here and look at Buzz, he had difficulty decoding 25th and 16th, yet he got enough from what he read to have his comprehension be at the 37th percentile. So Buzz needed symbol imagery, direct stimulation of symbol imagery in order to become a global reader, not an analytical reader. And here's Sophie, a quick look at Sophie, and this is a student that I worked with. She had easily learned to read words in her early grades, but by 4th grade she was sick before going to school, and this is all a true story, and they moved her to the front of the class, which didn't help her performance. So if you look at her vocabulary and her word attack and her word recognition, these are all getting well filled in here. Word attack, these subsets are very filled in for her. And then let's look at her reading in context. Here she is down here, paragraph reading, 95th percentile. Let's look at comprehension, 2nd percentile. The gap between her ability to decode and her ability to comprehend was not caused by weakness in vocabulary. She understood the meaning of the words, but she couldn't image it all together. Are you getting it? Okay, so now what do we do about it? Step 1. I urge you to consider the importance of a learning ability evaluation to determine a learning profile. With my own children, I always wanted to know what was easy for them and what was hard for them, because sometimes you can think your child or your student in your class is not trying. They have a behavior problem, when in fact, you need to know what their learning profile looks like to see about strengths and weaknesses. That's the first thing that you do. And I think actually Carson told us a little bit about that. And we had DC telling us what she was doing for a learning ability evaluation. So this is what it looks like. There's a variety of tests. It takes 3 to 4 hours to do that test and come up with percentiles and standard scores. And then once we know the profile, then we go to step 2. And from step 1, we can proceed to step 2, which is recommending individualized instruction. Usually, it's what we call intensive instruction, and that's one-on-one. The big thing is it's 4 hours a day, 5 days a week. So you can think that Monday through Friday, oops, too many, we are going to intensify the learning experience and the stimulation that we're going to do to help the student, the individual, begin to bring the sensory information of imagery to consciousness. So let's just look at a little bit of that with Carson for a second.
This is my center instructor. She works for me.
Every Lindamood-Bell Learning Center is committed to providing consistent, high-quality instruction in a caring environment. Each of our centers is owned and operated by the founders, so you can rest assured that when you come to us, you're getting the real thing. We want this to be your Lindamood-Bell Learning Center too. And also, technically, I don't work for him.
So just a little bit more drilling down into symbol imagery instruction. Obviously, you know now that I'm working on those subsets when we're developing Buzz's ability to create images. So and that underlies word attack, word recognition, those inner circles. And this is what you need to do to stimulate. You can't just say to Buzz, hey, picture those letters. He can't do that. I can tell you that I work with individuals here at Lindamood-Bell that will tell me I don't visualize numbers easily. I can't remember, I can't picture phone numbers anymore, especially because now I have them all loaded into my phone. I never bring them out except to push a button. Or I can't spell. But often those individuals have no difficulty with comprehension because it can be this two-sided coin. So if I'm going to develop symbol imagery, I have to, as the instructor, ask very specific questions to stimulate that. I can't just say, visualize some letters. So here's Nancy saying, what letters do you picture for IP? And obviously this starts with just a small vowel and a consonant, and I'm asking Buzz to picture, we go through a series of steps. And then I'm going to show him a card like that, and then I'm going to say, after the card's taken away, can you write that in the air? What did you see? What's the second letter that you saw? So after the card is taken away, Buzz Images says the letter names, he air writes, it's important that he air writes, and decodes it. So as I'm developing this orthographic memory, I ask those questions to make sure that he is visualizing with a card not there anymore, he's relying simply on his imagery. I'm asking him specific questions. Here's what a mother wrote to me. In the 9 weeks that my daughter was here part-time, my child went from not recognizing a single sight word to reading me a book at the second grade level. So this was a girl that we taught to read, that they had struggled to find some way to help her learn to read. So now let's just switch gears really quickly and talk about concept imagery. So this is for comprehension. This is this circle. And what we call concept imagery underlies this big circle. So I can't again say to Sophie, I know you're reading the words accurately, Sophie. I know you're reading the words accurately, Sophie, but I want you to picture them as you read them. And I asked college students that many years ago, and I can tell you that I had many adults and many college students who could talk more easily about what they experienced. They would say, it's dark up there, I just don't see anything. And that is exactly what someone like Sophie would have said. So we have to go through a series of steps asking very specific questions. Again, here's Nancy. Very specific questions to stimulate the imagery. And as we go through a series of steps, we finally arrive at the point where we can do sentence by sentence imaging, whole paragraphs, and ask the student from what you pictured, why. We can start to begin to ask those higher order thinking skills based on imagery. Are you getting it? Okay, here's what a mother also wrote to me. The daughter that I see now loves to read. Lindamood-Bell was able to provide the right setting, instructors, and resources to aid in her comprehension deficit and build her self-esteem that was robbed by years of wrong placement and diagnosis. And the reason that I put that in there is that so many of these students that are like Sophie go undiagnosed. It looks like it's a behavior problem because it's hard to test for this. These are the students that I believe are really lost in the classroom, unlike Buzz, where you can see that he misspells or you can see that he miscalls. Sophie is a lot harder to detect, which is what that mother is saying. So here they are, just to finalize this. So I know that you can have the picture for this in your head. Symbol imagery for decoding. Comprehension is related to concept imagery. So now we're in the final leg of our time together. I'm going to talk to you about some behavior and neurological research. We have data after 30 years or more than 30 years, we have data on thousands of students in our learning centers. And we're also global in that we have learning centers in London, Singapore, we've been in Europe, going back to Europe, and in Australia, we're not just national now, we're international, which was our big goal. So we have data on all these students, and here's what we've looked at from 2008 to 2018. These are the students that we saw that were decoding only. Let me just take a moment to say to you that you can have a student that has only the issue with buzz, only that difficulty, or only the comprehension issue, but lots of our students have both, maybe a lot of trouble decoding and a little bit of trouble comprehending, or flip-flop it. They can have a lot of trouble comprehending but a little trouble decoding. So the students that you're going to see now back on this slide are the students that were decoding only. They were pure buzz. And the graph that you're going to see was with an average amount of instruction of only 103 hours. And all the gains that you see here are statistically significant. For example, we'll talk about word attack, going from the 16th percentile to the 47th percentile. Now this is on the average in 103 hours. Word recognition, 25th to 47th. Accuracy, 7th to 19th. And even though that hasn't hit those levels up in here, they will continue to grow. But look at this. Now these students are comprehending. They may be decoding slowly, but they're comprehending well above where they came in. So this is what it looks like when you look at standard scores. The purple here shows that these gains are all large. I also want to point something out. I'm going back a slide to point something out. We did no standard phonological awareness work. We did not do any teaching to a test on phonological awareness, but I want you to see with just developing symbol imagery that we are getting the same gains or tremendous gains on a phonological test. So one of the things that we're learning is that symbol imagery and phonological awareness are absolutely pals. They're connected. Comprehension only, again, these are the Sophie only. They had less than 100 hours of instruction. And I took out the slide that shows that, no, maybe let me see, I did leave it in. These are students that have high decoding and weak comprehension. So this is the change in comprehension from the 23rd percentile to the 47th percentile in oral directions, in word opposites, which is a vocabulary test, an expressive vocabulary test, and a receptive vocabulary test. What I want to point out to you here, and I hope that you're still with me, look at this. Vocabulary was well within the normal range, but comprehension was not. So again, it was not what people tend to think, if you can just develop vocabulary, you'll get the changes in comprehension. Absolutely, that's not what we see. Here's standard scores. Again, look at that in comprehension. Now, this is what I really wanted to take just a moment to show you. These are the comprehension students that have a severe gap. And these students, for example, comprehension is at the 8th percentile, and word recognition is at the 88th percentile, and vocabulary is at the 42nd. So they should be able to comprehend with those decoding scores and that vocabulary score. This is after 101 hours of instruction. These would be the students that people would think that you're not going to be able to, their comprehension skills are so low at the 8th percentile, people will think that you can't make a difference for them. And in just a little over 100 hours, their comprehension skills went from the 8th percentile to the 47th percentile, and that should make you gasp. That is life-changing. Okay, and that's the standard score change. Now, my very last communication to you is that I want to talk about, we have a lot of research partners, MIT, Wake Forest, Georgetown. We've done a lot of research with universities. This is with the University of Washington. It's very current. It was ages 7 to 12, 24 students. It was a randomized controlled study. This has been written up in Nature. And the title is Rapid and Widespread White Matter Plasticity During an Intensive Reading Intervention. So when I'm going to show you the next slides, I want you to think about that I'm not only talking to you now about changing reading performance and making life easier, I'm now talking to you about changing neurological function. It is a huge, huge contribution to the field of reading. Neuroimaging research, symbol imagery focused intensive reading intervention leads to increased neural connectivity for dyslexic students. Randomized controlled intervention, I'll leave that there just for a little bit if you want to try to read it. I won't read all of that to you. This is the most important thing for you and me. The reading skills improved by an average of 1 full grade level after only 8 weeks of intervention. And that was intensive. I believe it was 3 hours a day. I don't think it was quite 4. But the students who took part in the 8-week intervention to develop symbol imagery for phonological and orthographic processing. Diffusion MRI data collected during instruction indicates, it was throughout the instruction, that there were large-scale changes in white matter conductivity correlating with the gains in reading. Subjects in the control group showed no changes. The results of the study illustrate that the Seeing Stars program, which is a symbol imagery program, led to increased brain structure conductivity and improved reading for children with reading difficulties, including those with a prior label of dyslexia. And here's what Dr. Yateman said. He was part of the study. While many parents and teachers might worry that dyslexia is permanent, reflecting intrinsic deficits in the brain, these findings demonstrate that targeted, intensive reading programs not only lead to substantial improvements in reading skills, but also change the underlying wiring of the brain's reading circuitry. What that means to you and me is that dyslexia does not have to be lifelong. You can actually change how the brain is processing information and change the reading behaviors. My final slide. My daughter entered the program hating to read. I sometimes catch her at 2 a.m. reading under her covers, and even took a book away once as punishment. Carson's going to finish this up for you and me, and then I'll come back with one last slide.
Carson had really been struggling in school. We'd had friends and heard so many great success stories about Lindamood-Bell. We figured that had to be the best choice for him. The atmosphere was so comfortable, and it felt like we were bringing him to a friend's house. And it was really a great experience from the moment we set foot in the center. The test results were great, but the real improvement came in his reduced frustration level and his newfound joy in learning. I would highly recommend Lindamood-Bell for any student that's having a difficulty in school. It's just been a fundamental difference in his confidence, in his abilities. It's night and day.
This is my Lindamood-Bell Learning Center. However, I am willing to share.
We believe passionately that children and adults can be taught to read and comprehend their potential. I hope you enjoyed this magical tour of us doing the magic of learning, and I would be honored to someday work with you or your students. Thank you very much.